Welcome back for another week of Political Breakfast. We are so glad to have you here on WABE. Our strategist, Republican strategist Brian Robinson is here. Democratic strategist Tharon Johnson is here. Our producer Lily Oppenheimer is here. And boy, what a weekend we are coming off. Half of Atlanta, or I should say a large swath of Atlanta without water over the weekend. I live near, the boundaries of that happening. And so I was lucky I had water, but so many people did not and just suffered through the weekend. And my heart just went out to a lot of people. How about you?
Well, Lisa, the thing that was really interesting and it all happened so quickly, meaning we all woke up Friday morning, just for our listeners, and everything was fine. I remember vividly leaving my house and having water. The first indication that I realized that there was some water problems is that a colleague of mine was basically like, hey, I'm running late to our 11 o'clock. I'm going to be running late to our lunch that day. I was like, why? He's like, because I have no water. And I'm like, oh, he's just making an excuse. Like, this guy's just going to be late. And as we taped Georgia Game, which is a public affairs show, I was on the set literally getting text messages from people saying, hey, my water is off. And so it was very unfortunate for homeowners. It was very unfortunate for business owners as well, because later on that day, B-Rob, I sent you an invitation, and maybe it got lost in your spam, but your favorite congresswoman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett, was in town. But I did save you a T-shirt that she made, when she made the comments about Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah. Does the T-shirt have a lot of alliteration? I hear she really likes to do alliteration.
Yeah, she's definitely monetizing her statements about the congresswoman from Georgia. But the business facility where we were having the event, Lisa, was just like, hey, we can't do it because we don't know if we're going to have water. So very unfortunate for city residents. But let's get into the meat of what I guess that really kind of happened. Folks in Atlanta, we know that we have a very dated, old infrastructure. That's why President Biden and others, members of Congress, are always trying to get cities and counties infrastructure money to improve their pipes and their roads and stuff like that. I don't think that the citizens blame the mayor for the pipe bursting and for it being a crack and for it to happen simultaneously. One was over in James P. Brawley, which is in sort of the AUC area near downtown Atlanta going southwest. And then the other one was in Midtown, which happened shortly thereafter that broke. And so I think the communication to the residents, to the business owners, to the tourists, people who were in the hotels downtown, and to repeat what the mayor said, that he apologized and that he said we could have done better. Be that as it may, very unfortunate 24 to 36 hours, the mayor and his team has been on it from this point on. I woke up early Monday morning to a video with the mayor saying, hey, we proactively saw another leak at another part of the city of Atlanta. I think it was on North Avenue. And so this mayor and this council and the watershed commissioners are working through tonight. And thank you for those frontline workers. Many of them, I'm hearing, these women and men, Lisa, have not been asleep in the last 3 to 4 days. They have been working throughout the night to fix these problems with the pipes and the water pressure.
Yeah, I think the mayor was out of town and he came right back. But there was 1 second I was thinking, okay, 5 breaks back to back to back.
Which is crazy.
I was
Never
thinking,
happened before. Yeah.
We were under some kind of attack here, here in Atlanta. But yeah, it was not a pleasant weekend. My heart goes out to a lot of people. A lot of events had to be canceled as well. I think Megan Thee Stallion had 2 concerts, and there were some other big
she's
parties
used to make a little news of her own too. She's spoken out a little bit. But I'll say this, as a communicator, this is the sort of stuff where the person who has my role was at the tip of the spear, and the ball was dropped here over the weekend. It's not just the fact that people were without water for a while. As Tharon said, we have aging infrastructure. It's true where I live in North DeKalb, too. We every once in a while have this, urgent talk on the next door app about people saying that our pipes will cause cancer. And then I always have to call Mike Thurman and be like, hey, Mike, are our pipes going to cause us cancer? And those pipes have been there for 80 years, Brian. We would have a cancer outbreak by now.
Right.
But we have a major problem in the metro area where that sewer infrastructure is very old and it's very expensive to replace. But it's going to be something we have to do. the ball being dropped was more on the communication side. When you are in a crisis like that, the department, if not the mayor, needs to be putting out communications through their social channels, through earned media, every hour or numerous times an hour. I lived this and learned this the hard way. What I would imagine is that there was some communicator in the belly of the beast. They're going, we need to communicate, we need to communicate. And there's some bureaucracy there going, we can't communicate right now. There are things we don't know. If we say this, we might get burned because of X. That is the fight that the communicator has in any of these crisis situations. You've got people trying to CYA, as opposed to proactively communicating with the public and taking the risk that you might get something wrong in the communications. My advice is take that risk. People are understanding of you making mistakes if you are proactively trying to communicate information. People needed to get the boil water advisory much quicker than they did. You know, I'm not the most conscientious about such things. If there's a water main break in my neighborhood, I don't immediately think, oh, I'm going to boil the water. I might go and use bottled water maybe for a while. But I do want to know from my local government the situations that are affecting the water coming into my house that my daughter is drinking. And they dropped the ball on that. And I think that you're going to see some reforms internally in City Hall as a response to this. What surprised me, though, was Andre Dickens is so good at communicating. When he first became mayor, he did what his predecessor never did. He went out there and really took to the streets when there was violent crime. He would show up and he would say, I'm here, I hear you, I'm going to work to protect you. And I think part of this was him being out of town. He was in Memphis when it first happened. But there needs to be infrastructure in place to fill the gap, even if the mayor isn't here. And that didn't happen. That gap was not filled. And look, this is not deadly for Andre Dickens. I think he's very popular, but it's a learning experience.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, you talk about that chain of communication. Was he just getting bad information? Because he said early on, he thought in the beginning that, it was under control, and then it just kind of evolved into something else. I'm just wondering if he was getting bad information, because he is that communicator, and he is, right there, on the spot when something unfolds in the city. So I'm just wondering if that was the issue.
Yeah, I mean, just for our listeners, Lisa, I know for a fact this happened. Commissioner Al Wiggins, who's only been in the job now for less than a month, but he previously was the Public Works Commissioner, did do media briefings that day. Let's walk our listeners through, I think, what happened. The water main, the pipe, something happened, it burst early morning, right? Mm-hmm. Then I think it wasn't until maybe around noon, closer to 1, where I knew that there was a press briefing where the Commissioner Al Wiggins, who again has only been on the job for less than a month, previously the Public Works Commissioner, the other Commissioner, Makita Browning, was not there anymore. There was a briefing to the press. And then I know that later on that afternoon, it was communicated that there was going to be a water outage. What didn't happen, and I don't want to beat up on the mayor and the administration too much, is you didn't get what you're seeing now. It wasn't an immediate tweet. It wasn't a video saying, hey, water is out. This is where you go. Hey, this zip code, this neighborhood. Hey, go to do your water boil advisory, right, to B. Rob's point. And so, but let's also give them a little bit of slack here. It was only roughly about 24 hours, because the next morning, Saturday morning, you did see the communication. You did see the mayor do a press conference along with council member Byron Amos, where the first one brought. But Lisa, let's go back to what you said.
When you can't bathe, and you can't.
You can't. Yeah, I know, and I get it. Look,
that's a long time. That's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time, and I sympathize. Right? Look, I sympathize with the residents, and I sympathize with the business owners. But what I'm just trying to do is say, I want to applaud the mayor for first and foremost apologizing. Second, and B. Rob and Lisa, we know this. We cover politicians all the time who are afraid to say you're sorry and afraid to say, hey, we will do better. Mm-hmm. And I think the third thing that happened is that we got to talk about it. It was 5 at one time, Lisa. I've talked to a lot of folks in other counties. I talked to folks in Miami. I talked to folks in Texas. no one, I believe, has
happened?
had 5 major breaks at one time. And so it was just not enough time and awareness maybe leading up to that to be able to fix it. But I am just saying this. You look at this mayor. He was out at 2 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning. He has got his team on it as far as communicating. And I would just encourage the residents to, you have a right to be mad. You're right. You need your water. You can lose your electricity, but then you can blame the city and Georgia Power and EMCs. But your water is so important. And then just for our listeners, it's not just the city of Atlanta. It's Smyrna. It's Sandy Springs, right? All these local multi-jurisdictional areas require the partnership with the city of Atlanta to have this water. So a bad 24 to 36 hours, sympathize with the residents and the business owners. Going forward, I think that this mayor and this council and this administration has a plan.
I'll say this. This was a really bad visual. I got up Saturday morning, and I live in Brookhaven, so a city of Atlanta water main break doesn't affect me personally. So I was a little tuned out, really. I wasn't paying that much attention on Friday. It wasn't my problem. But I woke up Saturday, and I saw a tweet from a AJC reporter saying, follow the city's watershed management here on this social account. And so I'm looking Saturday morning, and there had not been a post in 11 plus hours at that juncture. That's a major communications breakdown. That's a place where a rational citizen looking for information would go proactively look. And I know you may not be able to have a silver bullet, an answer for every question on that social media feed, but you need to show activity. You need to say, crews now at so-and-so street, and here's what's happening. Even if it's not promising that in 12 hours this is going to be fixed, which is what everybody wants, right? Everybody wants to know, like, what's the hour countdown before I can turn my water faucet back on or I can drink water out of the faucet without fear of contamination. Even if you can't do that, you got to communicate something. That was the breakdown here. And look, this is not just a local issue. This was one of the lead stories of ABC
National.
World News Tonight on Sunday night, right? So you got the visuals on national TV of water gushing through the streets of Atlanta and citizens complaining about having no information. And Megan Thee Stallion, is that her name? I just know.
Yeah.
I know it's got 2 E's in the V. I know that.
2 concerts. She had to postpone 2 concerts. Yeah.
I saw her. Yeah, there's video of her complaining, saying, call the mayor. So a bad PR day. Look. Look, bad PR days are part of politics.
Her tweets was one of the first out there, alerting people that something was wrong. So
maybe she should go work for watershed management. Maybe she could handle their social platforms. I mean, she's on top of it.
Yeah, well, I do know some of those officials who were involved with all of this over the weekend are going before the city council today, to kind of explain, what happened. So, certainly more to come on this issue. But I think water has been restored, correct, Lily? 90%?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they still have a few areas that are dead, but the majority
real quickly,
of water
if I
has
can
been
say this,
restored.
Thank you to DeKalb County and other counties who joined Atlanta to help them restore water. The other thing that I want to say is that there were people who gave out bottled water all across the city. You saw the tanker trucks going to the hospitals. Let me just say this. The city of Atlanta had to prioritize senior centers. They had to prioritize hospitals. And so Grady, I know Emory downtown had to temporarily kind of had some problems. But, I do want to commend the city for at least communicating. And they did do this, B-Rob. You're right. It wasn't a fluid thread, but they did say, hey, we got to prioritize our hospitals, our senior centers. And shout out to the employers. I know a lot of employers, a lot of my clients actually work with the city and say, hey, let's send our people home, right? So the least amount of people who are using the water, right?
Right.
It actually helped to get it restored. But those counties like DeKalb County, Cobb County, they all joined the city of Atlanta to work on this crisis.
To help, Love that. Well, certainly more to come on this, but hopefully that drama is over for all of the residents here in Atlanta. Tharon, you weren't here last week. You had another commitment. We went live last Friday on Morning Edition to talk about the verdict that came down in New York regarding former President Donald Trump, convicted on 34 felony counts during that hush money trial. Interested to hear what your reaction is.
Well, I'm so sorry that I did not get a chance to participate in the live broadcast. I heard it went well, but unfortunately, I was actually in New York. I was in New York.
Wow.
Were you protesting? Were you celebrating the Trump convention with your sign out there?
I had a hat. I had to have my hat pulled down, be Rob, my sunglasses on, my Tom Ford sunglasses, and my bandana around my face. No, I was not doing that. No, I was actually there on business and was traveling back to Atlanta that next morning. So you guys went live on Friday. I was here Thursday. But let me just give you the reaction from New York. Literally, Lisa and B. Rob, there were people in New York, in the Times Square area, celebrating. I mean, we all remember that video when I think he, took the mug shot, and folks were jumping up at the bar. Wasn't as sort of robust as that, but you had a lot of New Yorkers who basically, and this is why I bring this up, they felt like this man that they've known for decades, this man and his father they've known for decades, these sort of racist practices, discriminatory practices in the housing markets and the shady business deals. I mean, Lisa, I sat there for hours hearing story after story from New Yorkers telling me Donald Trump has been doing this always. He's always been a guy who can never negotiate fairly. He was the same guy who went after the Central Park Five. And so there was actually a liberating moment in New York. And this is where I'm going to get to where I feel and how this was a truly historic moment. Yes, it was historic because in our 240-year history that a former president, this is the first time ever that a former president has been a convicted felon on 34 counts. And I encourage our listeners to go and look at these charges. These are charges that were very serious, and it mounted back to when he was running for president the first time and even before. And I don't care who you are. When a jury takes literally less than 2 days, right, to I think 12 hours plus or maybe complete deliberation, and to find you guilty on all charges, this whole narrative about it being rigged is just not true. And when I hear Republicans complain about the criminal justice system, right, and that it's a slippery slope when we start having Republican DAs start going after the former president Barack Obama and these other former presidents for things that they did, nothing compares to what this president was convicted of. And he got a fair day in court. Supreme Court. This case was basically brought up years ago. The reason it was so delayed, Lisa, just remind listeners, because the Trump defense team kept trying to make motions. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. So finally, he had his day in court, judged by 12 civilians in New York. He had a fair trial. Now, whether or not his defense put forth an alternative narrative, that's their fault. But the narrative was that this is a man who had participated in a scheme, an illegal scheme to provide hush money to a adult entertainer, dancer that he had a relationship with. And he also used money illegally, funneled it through an attorney to make stories go away that would have been jeopardizing in a negative way to his campaign and also to his business. And so before we just rush to judgment and just say, oh, our criminal justice system is not working, this is the same criminal justice system, Lisa, that the Republicans right now are depending on to actually, as we talk about this, prosecute Hunter Biden. They've been glorifying this criminal justice system to go after Hunter Biden in Delaware. So as we're here this week, the president's son is going before trial, before a jury of his peers. So it's going to go through deliberations. And then the last thing I would say is this. I have convicted felons in my family. I know convicted felons that are colleagues, right? We have some former elected officials in Georgia who have been convicted of a felony, right? And they've gone on and they've gotten a second chance. We have a problem in America where you have a convicted felon right now, and he's going to appeal, and he's going to lose that appeal, right? And his sentencing is on July 11th, and he may or may not get jail time. But only in the country like this where a convicted felon of 34 counts will still be able to run for president. That's not Donald Trump's fault. That's the Constitution's fault. That's our forefathers' fault, right? So if people who are convicted felons who try to have a second or third chance can't apply for a job, Lisa, there are certain jobs that they can't even be qualified for. There's certain places they can't live. There's certain things they can't do. Certain things they can't travel, can't vote. I mean, like all these things they got to go through. But this man, this former president, is still going to be able to be the Republican nominee, and he's going to still be able to run for president. So here's my warning to Democrats. And you notice I'm not in a celebratory tone. I'm in a very serious tone because I'm worried. And I'm worried that there's a group of people, and you see it, I'm not just making this up, B-Rob knows this is true, that is literally trying to make this guy into a hero. They're giving him millions and millions and millions of dollars. I like what the president said. The president said this: don't get too comfortable, convicted or not. Donald Trump is going to be the Republican nominee. And Democrats, we better make sure that we match that enthusiasm on the right and make sure we turn out and vote, because the way you beat Donald Trump is keeping him out of the White House. You beat him at the ballot box. We knew that he was going to go through this trial. We knew he was going to come out and say it was rigged. We knew he was going to come out and question the criminal justice system. I didn't think he was going to get convicted on all 34 charges, but he is going to feel emboldened. And we got to make sure that we follow the president's message, and that is continue to register to vote and make sure that we're ready to beat this man in November.
Brian, days later, anything changed about your perspective, specifically Republicans who were hesitant to support Trump or go public with their support, who seem to be coming out of the woodworks? What are your thoughts there?
I think what we saw, what we learned coming out of this is that Republicans think it is politically safe to come out in defense of Donald Trump in this issue. Even those who aren't his natural allies, like Governor Brian Kemp, immediately came out with social media statement calling it political prosecution and persecution. So for Brian Kemp to do that, it shows that even the non-Trump wing of the party is seeing this as a rallying point. We saw that with the website crashing as the donations poured in. You saw Georgia's Kelly Loeffler and Jeff Sprecher going to a fundraiser for Trump that night in New York City that raised $30 million. So you do see people who are, and those are high-profile people, not just in Georgia. I mean, this is the guy who owns the New York Stock Exchange, willing to be publicly associated with the former president. So Republicans obviously don't think that this is political poison. They think that this is unfair, and they're willing to publicly say it. And that is very telling. You know, we're often too scared to say what we think because of how it's going to be reacted to in the business community, or you're going to get canceled or whatever. The fact that people feel free to step out shows that the situation has hardened for Republicans. They no longer see this as politically dangerous. 50% of Americans think that Donald Trump is a felon, and 50% of Americans think that the charges are politically motivated. It really does seem to be that evenly split on this. So I don't know that politically this makes a huge difference. We haven't seen yet, we need a little more time, and we haven't seen any new polling that where this information is baked in. But if in our next round, let's say in mid-June, we get polling that shows the numbers haven't moved, then this is a non-issue. This means that the American people, or at least enough of them, think that Alvin Bragg is not a credible person to tell us that Donald Trump is a felon.
Lisa, I would just say this. This is a very dangerous point in our country right now. You know, my mom, who I talked to about everything, actually, this past weekend, just, said, look, son, you need to be very careful about how you say things and what you say, because even though I feel I'm right, like I feel that this country was built on a criminal justice system that gave an opportunity for a defense lawyer or a person to basically put up their defense. The defense had an opportunity to present an alternative narrative, and they didn't. All right, let's just point this out. And the fact that you got convicted in less than 2 days, right, by a jury of your peers in New York City, right? And let's just take our listeners through this. This is the same defense team, Lisa, that picked this juror. So this whole notion that the system was rigged and he didn't get a fair day in court, that just didn't happen. I mean, the evidence was specific against this man, and he's going after the judge. And I think that for us to start questioning a criminal justice system and to saying that it's rigged, we're going to be a country that is going to lose control of how people are treated fairly, and how people, when they do bad things, that's a system that's been in place for a very long time. The other thing that really concerns me is I think that these people that B-Rob mentioned, some of whom I know, I think he just said it. They feel it's safe to rally around what they think could have been done differently. They're not necessarily rallying. And if you rally around the process, you got to rally around the man. And the fact of the matter is that I think all these Republicans have thought long and hard that you want to be around a man who, by the way, if you look at everybody who has been in his organization, from the day he started his campaign, even before, all those guys have either gone to jail or are they actually in jail right now, or they testified against him. And I think the most damning information that really went to him is Michael Cohen. And people credit his, criticize his credibility, but this was the man that was carrying out the shady deals for Trump. This is the man that gave Stormy Daniels the hush money, right? Mm-hmm. His former press secretary, communications director, this, B-Rob. I mean, for you would never go against Governor Nathan Deal, right? I mean, it would have to be something extraordinarily wrong. You're smiling. I hope this video makes it, right? For you to go and take the stands against your former boss. That happened in this trial. So I think that, and I'm just going to say it, Lisa.
Wow.
Republicans are feeling emboldened to come to the rescue of a man they feel like has been treated wrong. My question to them would be, is that if you're going to do that, then make sure that you embody and you embrace all the bad things that come along with him. We can question not whether he was treated fairly. And let's not forget, these are things that Donald Trump did. No one made Donald Trump give that $100,000 and some thousand to Stormy Daniels. I would think it was roughly $130,000. He decided that. No one made him do the things that he was doing. So what we got to do as Democrats is follow the president's response. And I believe this, Lisa, in this country, there are enough good people out there that know putting a convicted felon back into the White House who have shown you who he is, shown you how divisive he could be. I just believe that there's millions and millions of voters out there that will side on this, will side with President Biden and know, no matter what you feel about him, no matter how much you question his age and other things, he's a man of integrity. He's a man of character. And he's not someone that is being convicted by 12 of his peers for felonies. And I just think that that's the difference. And we got to figure out the right way to amplify that.
What was your feeling when, those campaign funds started pouring in for Trump soon after his conviction? And how will that translate in November, do you think?
Well, President Trump has had a fundraising disadvantage throughout most of this campaign up until very recently. And now he's competitive and actually exceeding President Biden on these measures from time to time. So you're seeing not only your small dollar donations, but that's what's coming in through that website that caused the website to crash. That's people giving $25, $50. That's something the Dems have done so much better than Republicans for a really long time, like getting these low dollar donors. That's something that Obama really perfected. Republicans are catching up on that. And if incidences like this are galvanizing for Republicans and really, ratcheting up those small dollar donations coming in. And it expands your fundraising base. It gives you folks that you can go back to again and again and again because they're getting nowhere close to the maximum. But then you got your big donor guys, like what I was saying, like Kelly Loeffler's Jeff Sprecher doing the fundraising event with Trump the night of the conviction, raising $30 million in one pop. So, what I see is a rallying effect and people kind of being put on war footing. I do want to hit on one thing Tharon said, that, and I'm not an expert on this, but I was talking with a former prosecutor in the Cobb County District Attorney's Office who's now doing something else. I'll protect their anonymity. But she was saying, as a prosecutor, the short length of time that the jurors in this case mold the evidence and mold the 37 counts shows that they didn't seriously dive into the 37 counts. This was a complicated case. This was not a whodunit, right? This is, legal theories here. And, is this a crime or is it not? Should this be a felony? Should this be a misdemeanor? You get the feeling that those things weren't seriously discussed by these jurors and that they went in there and very quickly convicted him on all counts without seriously looking at this 37 counts. You could very easily go in and say he's not guilty on a few just to make it look like you were looking at him, right? Just to make the optics a little bit better. But you convict him on all of them, makes it look partisan, and it makes it easier for Republicans to say this is partisan.
9.5 hours wasn't enough to mull over all of those counts, huh, Brian?
That's what I was told. I don't know. That's what a prosecutor told me. This is a very complicated case.
Yeah, this again, Lisa, the calmness in my voice, this is a very slippery slope. Because let me tell you what's going to happen now. When you start and I'm not attacking you, B-Rob. I'm just saying I don't know who this person is. But when you start talking about the hours of deliberation and if people take a long time versus a short time, that can definitely sort of allow people to sort of play with whether or not the jurors took this serious or not. I think I got to push back on that, because I think that these women and men put their lives on hold, right? Mm-hmm. They sat there for weeks listening to the evidence, right? Don't blame the jurors. Blame the defense team of Donald Trump. They did not do a good job, B-Rob. They did not. And I guarantee you that if Donald Trump was on this podcast right now in his rant, I guarantee you he would say that his defense did not do a good job to push back on the narrative that this man was running a criminal empire that was using money to try to deflect and encourage people and intimidate them to not print news about him, factual things. Mm-hmm. So I just think that's got to be careful. That can't be a narrative that we can stand by and support, because if that's the case, then why have a judicial system? If that's the case, Lisa, why have judges? Why have a jury? Why have lawyers? If you're telling me that people are going to be criticized for just saying, you know what, we're just going to prosecute the man because of our personal feelings. I do believe, just to remind people, all it took is one juror to stand up and say, no, I don't agree with that, right? And so I don't think it was what this person is sort of shared with you in Cobb County. I think these folks were looking at the evidence. They looked at it case by case, count by count, and it was a reoccurring theme that these were actual things that he had done. Now, where I do think there may be some wiggle room, Lisa, is that what I'm being told is that there are going to be some attorneys who are going to file push back on the motions that were made. You know, how much did the judge allow them to sort of move forward the process, right? Mm-hmm. So there may be some wiggle room there to criticize the process in which the trial was sort of administered. But this fact that these jurors, and I think, look, as we tape, there's going to be one that's going to come out and I think push back on that narrative, Brian. I think they're going to say that this was a room of people who had very good arguments on both sides. But ultimately, when you really looked at the evidence and you followed the law and the counts, they put them on 34. And so, again, I didn't think it was going to be all 34 counts, but I knew that they were going to get them on something. But, you know, the fact that they did all 34, I think it's the opposite. I think they show they really want to send a message that this former president is not above the law.
Well, I think what Tharon has articulated here is the partisan divide in how you view this issue, right? And I'll leave it at that. I think what Tharon said, that's how Democrats see this. And what
that's how Americans should see it. But that's not how they see it. There's a partisan divide in how we view the process that happened. So you tell them, okay, so not they. You believe that. You believe that these jurors went in there and they didn't look at the evidence and the facts, and they just came back and gave this man. Is that what you believe? I don't believe that.
Yeah, I have a real problem with the felony convictions, as I've said here many times. I can get on board with a misdemeanor. Look, was there falsified documents or records? I can say yeah. I just don't think that's a felony conviction, right? And so that's part of where I see it as having gone too far. This idea of it being overcharged, which do I think a lot of Americans think that? Maybe even a majority think it was an overcharge. Yes. I think even people who think, yeah, he may have done something wrong, or he probably did something wrong, this was kind of an overreach.
Yeah, well, that debate it will certainly continue, and even on here in Georgia with the election interference case progressing, but probably will not go to trial before November 2024. Thank you, guys, as always, for your perspective. A little later this week, I want us to talk about a man by the name of Gabriel Sanchez. So for those who are listening, look him up if you don't know who he is. We're going to talk about him later this week on Political Breakfast, and you'll hear why. So thanks again, you guys, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.